My entire life, I lived in my older sister Ashley's shadow. She was the sun, bright and burning, and I was just a small rock orbiting around her, invisible to everyone else. Ashley was 3 years older than me, and those 3 years might as well have been a lifetime. She was the pretty one, the one with the perfect hair and the bright smile that made everyone in the room turn to look at her. She was the popular one, the one who always had friends calling, always had plans, always had somewhere important to be. She was the one who got everything she wanted, and I mean everything. If Ashley pointed at something and said she wanted it, it was hers. That was just how our family worked. And me? I was the quiet one, the one nobody really noticed unless Ashley needed something from me. Growing up, I learned to accept my place in the family hierarchy. But there was one thing that was truly, completely mine. My grandmother, before she passed away when I was 14, had left me a college fund. It wasn't a massive fortune, but it was enough. Enough to pay for a decent education, enough to give me a real chance at a future. My grandmother had always believed in education. She used to tell me that knowledge was the one thing nobody could ever take away from you. That money sat in an account with my name on it, waiting for me to turn 18. It was my ticket to a better future, my escape route, my chance to finally step out of Ashley's shadow and become someone in my own right. I dreamed of being an architect, of designing beautiful buildings that would stand for generations. That fund was going to make it all possible. Everything changed the summer I turned 17. Ashley got engaged to her boyfriend, Derek, a guy who worked in sales and drove a car he couldn't really afford. She was 20, and the moment that ring was on her finger, the wedding planning began. Ashley didn't just want a wedding. She wanted a fairy tale, a magazine-worthy event that everyone would talk about for years. The problem was, fairy tales cost money, a lot of money. More money than Ashley and Derek had, more money than my parents had saved. One night, my parents sat me down at the kitchen table. I remember their faces clearly, the way they couldn't quite meet my eyes. My father cleared his throat 3 times before he finally spoke. They told me that Ashley needed to use my college fund. They said it was for the wedding, that it was important, that family came first. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to tell me it was a joke, a terrible mistake. But she just reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We'll pay you back," she promised, her voice soft. "It's just a loan, sweetheart. We'll have the money back to you before you even start college." My father nodded vigorously, backing her up. "Absolutely," he said. "You have our word." But even as they made their promises, I could see Ashley standing in the doorway behind them. She had a small, triumphant smile on her face, the kind of smile she always had when she got exactly what she wanted. In that moment, I knew the truth with absolute certainty. My dream was being sacrificed for her perfect day. I would never see that money again. But I was 17, still a minor, still powerless. I had no choice but to watch it happen. Ashley's wedding was beautiful, I had to admit that. It was held at an expensive venue with a lake view. There were hundreds of white roses everywhere, a live band, an open bar, and a 5-tier cake that probably cost more than a used car. Ashley looked absolutely stunning in her designer dress, like a princess from a storybook. Everyone kept telling her how perfect everything was, how this was the wedding of the century. I sat through the entire ceremony and reception with a smile plastered on my face, a fake expression that made my cheeks hurt. Inside, I was dying. I watched my future being spent on flower arrangements and champagne. Every toast, every dance, every piece of that expensive cake felt like another piece of my dream slipping away forever. Nobody seemed to notice or care that I was falling apart inside. After the wedding, life went back to normal for everyone except me. Ashley and Derek moved into a fancy apartment in the city. They posted pictures constantly of their perfect newlywed life. Meanwhile, my 18th birthday came and went. I waited for my parents to mention the money, to start making payments, to keep their promise. But weeks turned into months, and the subject never came up. When I finally gathered the courage to ask about it, my mother looked uncomfortable. "Money is tight right now," she said vaguely. "You understand, don't you? We'll get it to you when things settle down." My father just nodded and changed the subject. Ashley was too busy with her new life to even call anymore. I felt completely and utterly alone. The people who were supposed to protect me had sacrificed my future without a second thought. The betrayal burned in my chest like acid. I spent weeks feeling sorry for myself, crying in my room, angry at the world. But eventually, something inside me shifted. I made a decision. I decided that I wouldn't let this break me, that I wouldn't let them steal my future completely. If my family wouldn't help me, then I would help myself. The week after my high school graduation, I enrolled in community college. It wasn't the university I had dreamed of, but it was a start. I got 2 part-time jobs, one at a coffee shop in the mornings and one at a retail store in the evenings. My days became a blur of classes, work, homework, and more work. I was exhausted all the time, running on coffee and determination. But for the first time in my life, I was building something that was entirely mine. Something nobody could take away from me. That feeling was worth every sleepless night. During my second semester at community college, I took an introductory architecture class, mainly because it fit my schedule. But something clicked the moment I started learning about design principles and structural engineering. I discovered I had a real talent for architectural drafting. The technical drawings, the precise measurements, the way a building came together on paper before it existed in reality, it all made sense to me in a way nothing else ever had. I loved the quiet, precise work where every line mattered, where my effort directly translated into something tangible and real. My professor noticed my talent and encouraged me to pursue it seriously. For the first time since losing my college fund, I felt hope again. This was something I was genuinely good at, something I could build a career on. Nobody could take this skill away from me once I learned it. It was mine forever. After 3 years of grinding through community college and endless work shifts, I finally graduated with my associate degree. I immediately started applying for jobs, any job that would let me use my drafting skills. Most places wanted someone with more experience, but I kept trying. Finally, I got a call from a small architectural firm called Keaton Designs. They were willing to take a chance on me as a junior drafter. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was honest work doing something I loved. My boss, Mr. Keaton, was a serious man in his 60s who believed in quality over quantity. He told me on my first day that at his firm, we did things right or we didn't do them at all. I thrived in that environment. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I finally felt like I was going somewhere real, somewhere meaningful. I worked at Keaton Designs for 5 years, slowly climbing from junior drafter to senior drafter to lead drafter. I became the person who handled the most complex projects, the one who double-checked everyone else's work before it went to clients. I was meticulous, careful, and reliable. Mr. Keaton came to trust me completely. In our firm, before any major architectural plan could be submitted to a client or filed with the city, it needed my signature as the lead drafter. I was the final stamp of approval, the last line of quality control. My signature meant that everything had been checked, that the design was sound, that the building could be constructed safely. It was a responsibility I took seriously. That signature represented my professional reputation, my integrity, everything I had worked so hard to build. I never signed anything unless I was absolutely certain it was perfect. That was my standard, and I never compromised on it. Life became calm and predictable, and I loved it. I had my own small apartment, nothing fancy but entirely mine. I had a job I genuinely enjoyed. I had peace, the kind of deep peace that comes from knowing you've built your life with your own hands. I rarely saw Ashley anymore. She and Derek had moved to a bigger city about 2 hours away. She worked for some development company, doing something in project management. Whenever she called, which wasn't often, she talked about her high-powered job, her important meetings, her expensive lifestyle. She never asked about me, never seemed interested in my life. That was fine with me. The distance between us felt healthy, like a wound that was finally healing. I had moved on from the hurt she had caused. At least, that's what I told myself. I didn't realize I was about to be tested on whether that was really true. One Tuesday morning, Mr. Keaton called an emergency meeting for the entire office. We all crowded into the conference room, maybe 15 of us total. Mr. Keaton stood at the front, and even though his face was serious, I could see excitement in his eyes. He told us that a massive real estate developer called Sterling Properties had chosen our firm for a major project. They wanted us to design a mixed-use development, residential and commercial, right in the heart of downtown. The project was worth millions of dollars, the biggest thing our small company had ever landed. If we did this right, it would put Keaton Designs on the map. If we messed it up, it could destroy us. The whole office erupted in excited chatter. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. Everyone knew that the next few months would make or break our company's future. The pressure was enormous, but we were ready for it. The energy in the office completely changed after that meeting. Everyone was buzzing with excitement and nervousness. This Sterling Properties project was all anyone could talk about. We started preparing immediately, pulling together preliminary designs, researching zoning requirements, planning timelines. I was assigned as the lead drafter for the project, which meant I would be responsible for all the technical drawings and final approvals. It was the biggest responsibility of my career. I felt the weight of it every single day. We all knew we had to be absolutely perfect. One mistake, one overlooked detail, and the whole thing could fall apart. But I was ready. This was exactly the kind of challenge I had spent years preparing for. I worked late every night, making sure every measurement was exact, every specification was clear, every detail was accounted for. I was determined that nothing would go wrong on my watch. The day of the first official meeting with Sterling Properties finally arrived. It was scheduled for 2 p.m. Our conference room had been cleaned and prepared. We had presentations ready, preliminary designs printed and displayed. I was in the conference room early, arranging documents and making sure everything was perfect, when I heard the door open behind me. I turned around to greet our clients. The lead project manager from Sterling Properties walked in first. The moment I saw her face, my heart stopped beating. Time seemed to freeze completely. It was Ashley. My sister, Ashley, was the project manager for Sterling Properties. She was the client. She was the person I would be working with for the next several months. Of all the companies in all the cities, she had walked into mine. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. But it was. Ashley's eyes widened for just a fraction of a second when she saw me. I watched recognition flash across her face. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. Her professional mask slid into place perfectly. She walked into the room like we were strangers, like we were distant acquaintances at most. Throughout the entire meeting, she never once called me by my name. She referred to me as the drafter or the technical lead. She talked about the project vision, about timelines and budgets and expectations. She was polished and professional, completely in control. But I noticed things others might have missed. the way her hands trembled slightly when she held her presentation pointer, the nervous sweat on her brow despite the cool air conditioning, the way she avoided making direct eye contact with me for too long. This project was huge for her too. She needed this to go well just as much as we did. The meeting lasted almost 3 hours. Ashley presented Sterling Properties' vision for the development. Mr. Keaton presented our firm's qualifications and initial ideas. I sat quietly, taking notes, answering technical questions when asked. The whole time, I was hyper-aware of Ashley's presence in the room. When the meeting finally ended and Sterling Properties' team prepared to leave, Ashley hung back. She waited until everyone else had left the conference room. Then she pulled me aside into the empty hallway. "Look," she said quietly, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Let's keep family out of this, okay? This is business. Professional. Let's just keep it that way." She paused, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Just do your job, and we'll be fine. No need to make things complicated. She was already treating me like I was just the hired help, like our shared history meant nothing. Like I was nothing. Then she walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the tile floor. The weeks that followed were some of the most stressful of my career. Ashley became increasingly demanding as the project progressed. She called our office almost daily with changes, new ideas, revised requirements. She moved deadlines up, then pushed them back, then moved them up again. She wanted modifications to designs we had already completed. She questioned every decision, challenged every recommendation. I could tell she was under enormous pressure from her own bosses at Sterling Properties. She was struggling, clearly in over her head with a project this large and complex. And she was taking all that stress and anxiety out on our team. My coworkers started complaining about the difficult client. They had no idea she was my sister. I kept that information to myself, worked longer hours, tried to keep everyone calm and focused. But it was getting harder every day. Ashley was spiraling, and she was dragging all of us down with her. About 2 months into the project, I ran into my mother at the grocery store. It was an awkward, uncomfortable conversation. She asked about my job in that vague way that meant she didn't really care about the answer. Then, almost casually, she mentioned that things were tough for Ashley and Derek. Apparently, Derek had lost his job several months ago. They were struggling financially, living off Ashley's salary alone. The fancy apartment, the expensive lifestyle, the perfect image they had worked so hard to maintain, it was all falling apart. My mother sighed heavily. "This project she's working on is really important," she said, not knowing I was working on the same project. "It's her last chance to prove herself at her company. If she succeeds, she gets a promotion. If she fails..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I understood perfectly. Ashley's entire future was riding on this project. The same project that required my approval to succeed. The irony was almost too perfect. Armed with this new information, I watched Ashley more carefully during our meetings. Now I could see what I had missed before. The designer clothes were from last season. The confident smile was covering desperation. The demanding attitude was masking fear. Her entire world was crumbling, and this project was the only thing holding it together. Part of me, the part that was still the little sister who had worshipped her, felt bad for her. But another part, the part that remembered watching my college fund pay for champagne fountains and ice sculptures, felt absolutely nothing. I focused on my work, making sure every design was perfect, every calculation was double-checked, every specification was clear. I stayed late at the office night after night, reviewing documents until my eyes burned. My team was counting on me. Mr. Keaton was counting on me. I wouldn't let them down, no matter how difficult Ashley made things. This was my job, my reputation, my integrity. I wouldn't compromise any of that, not even for family. Especially not for family. 3 months after the project began, we finally completed the designs. Every drawing was finished, every specification was written, every document was prepared. The plans were beautiful, truly some of the best work our firm had ever produced. I had personally reviewed every single page multiple times. I knew these designs were sound, that they would result in a building that was not only beautiful but safe and functional. Now all that remained was the formal approval process. Sterling Properties needed to sign off on the final designs, and then I needed to add my signature as lead drafter. Once both signatures were in place, the plans would be submitted to the city for permits, and construction could begin. We scheduled a final meeting for the formal approval. Every senior person from both companies would be there. Mr. Keaton, our entire design team, Ashley and her bosses from Sterling Properties. It was the finish line, the end of months of hard work. The day of that meeting, I woke up with a strange feeling in my stomach. Something was about to change. I could feel it. The final approval meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning. Our conference room was packed with people, the most I had ever seen in there. Mr. Keaton sat at the head of the table, looking proud and nervous. The design team was arranged along one side. Ashley and 3 executives from Sterling Properties sat on the other side. The plans were laid out on the table, thick binders of technical drawings and specifications. Everyone was dressed formally. The atmosphere was tense but excited. This was it, the moment that would determine whether months of work would move forward or fall apart. We went through the designs page by page, with different team members explaining various aspects. The Sterling Properties executives asked questions, nodded approvingly, made positive comments. Ashley sat quietly, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. After 2 hours of review, the lead executive from Sterling Properties smiled. "This is excellent work," he said. "We're ready to approve." The room relaxed slightly. We had done it. Ashley stood up from her seat, clearly ready to add her signature to the approval documents and end the meeting. She reached for the pen on the table, relief evident on her face. But before she could touch it, Mr. Keaton spoke up. "Just one moment," he said calmly. "Before we finalize, we need the final technical stamp from our lead drafter. That's our firm's policy on all major projects." He gestured toward me. Everything goes through her final review and approval. Suddenly, every single person in that conference room turned to look at me. I felt the weight of all those eyes, but I kept my face neutral, professional. Ashley's hand froze in midair. She turned to look at me too, and I watched as confusion crossed her face. Then, slowly, I saw understanding dawn in her eyes. Her face went completely white, all the color draining away in an instant. She finally understood. Her multi-million-dollar project, her last chance to save her career, her entire future, all of it needed my signature. The same person whose college fund she had spent on cake and flowers. The same sister she had dismissed and ignored and treated like she was worthless. I picked up my pen slowly, deliberately. The room was completely silent. Everyone was watching, waiting. Ashley was staring at me, and I could see panic starting to build in her eyes. For years, I had imagined a moment like this, had fantasized about having power over her the way she had always had power over me. But now that it was here, now that her future was literally in my hands, I felt strangely calm. I looked directly at her, holding her gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I kept my expression completely neutral and professional. Then I spoke, my voice clear and steady. "I need to review the final compliance documents first," I said. There are a few technical points in sections 12 and 17 that need clarification before I can sign off on this. It wasn't a lie. There were a few minor items that needed checking, but we all knew what I was really saying. I wasn't going to just sign it because she needed me to. I was going to do my job thoroughly and properly, regardless of who she was. The meeting ended shortly after that. The Sterling Properties executives said they would provide the clarifications I requested. Ashley didn't say a single word. She gathered her things mechanically and left with her team. The next day, she came to my office alone. It was early morning, before most of the staff had arrived. I was at my desk, reviewing documents, when I heard a soft knock on my door. Ashley stood in the doorway, and she looked completely different from the polished professional I had seen in meetings. She looked tired, worn down, defeated. The perfect sister facade was finally gone. She asked if she could come in. I nodded, but didn't invite her to sit. She stood awkwardly in front of my desk. Then she did something I never thought I would see. She apologized. It wasn't a quick, casual apology. It was real and raw and painful. She apologized for taking my college fund, for dismissing my dreams, for treating me like I didn't matter. She told me about her failing marriage, about the financial problems, about how this project was her last chance. Tears ran down her face as she spoke. I listened to Ashley's apology without interrupting. I let her say everything she needed to say. When she finally finished, she stood there looking at me with red, swollen eyes, waiting for my response. The old me, the sister who had worshipped her, wanted to immediately forgive her and make everything okay. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had grown, had built a life and career through my own effort. I had learned my worth. So I took my time. I thought about everything that had happened, about the years of pain and struggle, about the person I had become because of it all. Then I stood up and walked to my filing cabinet. I pulled out the compliance documents that Sterling Properties had sent over that morning. I reviewed them carefully, page by page, checking every detail one final time. Ashley watched me silently, barely breathing. When I was satisfied that everything was in order, I returned to my desk. I picked up my pen, that pen that held her entire future, and I signed the document. Not for her, but for me. Because I was good at my job, because my signature meant something, because I had earned the right to be the person who made this decision. The signature she had once made worthless, when she spent my future on her wedding, was now the most valuable thing she would ever receive from me. I looked up at her and simply said, "It's approved." She broke down crying, thanking me over and over. But I felt nothing but peace. My quiet success, built from the ashes of what she had taken, was the best revenge of all. I had won without ever trying to hurt her. And that made it so much sweeter.